convincing my mom to disown my sister after she stole our family heirloom and sold it for drugs. It's a Friday evening when everything comes to a head, the night my world flips upside down. I'm sitting at the kitchen table, hands shaking, staring at my phone. A message from my mom's old friend, Karen, has just popped up. The subject? I saw something that might interest you. The message is brief, but it hits like a sledgehammer. There's a photo attached, a necklace, old but undeniably beautiful, made of silver and emeralds that have been passed down through our family for generations. My great-grandmother wore it at her wedding in the 1930s. My grandmother wore it on the day my mom got married in 1975, and I wore it, despite being just a teenager at the time, to my own graduation 5 years ago. But now, it's sitting in a pawnshop window. Karen, being the good friend she is, thought to call me when she saw it. She sent me the picture, explaining that she couldn't imagine my mom parting with something so precious. I couldn't either, and yet, there it was. The family heirloom, our heritage, reduced to something for sale. At first, I was in denial. There's no way my mom would have sold it. No way she'd let such a significant piece of our history slip through her fingers like that. But the evidence was right in front of me. There was no mistaking it. And there was only one person who could have done it. My younger sister Zoe had always been a problem. I love her, I really do, but there's always been something off. She was the wild child, the one who took after my dad in all the worst ways, reckless, impulsive, and a little too good at getting out of trouble. We'd always chalked up her behavior to her being the youngest, the baby of the family. She was the one who would get caught sneaking out at night, but also the one who'd be in tears by morning, apologizing, saying she'd learned her lesson. We'd let it slide because it was easier than confronting the deeper issue, Zoe's addiction. The first time I found out about it, I was 15. She was 16. I walked into the house one night after being at a friend's place, only to find her lying in the hallway, barely able to move. I thought she was drunk, but when I tried to wake her, I realized her pupils were pinpricks. I called my mom, but when we got her to a hospital, the doctors confirmed it was heroin. Not just weed, not even just alcohol. Heroin. A full-blown addiction. Mom was devastated, but she did what she always did. She forgave her. She coddled her. Zoe had a string of rehab stints after that, each time promising to change, each time breaking Mom's heart. At first, Zoe would do the right thing, attending therapy, staying clean for months. But inevitably, something would set her off, and she'd go back to the needle, back to the lies. And each time, Mom would be there to catch her, to comfort her, to make excuses for her. It's hard to blame my mom entirely. She had this martyr complex, this desperate need to be the one who saved everyone. But the truth was, Zoe didn't want to be saved. She wanted to destroy herself, and she didn't care who she hurt in the process. When I heard that she had stolen the family heirloom, I wasn't entirely shocked. I should have been, but I wasn't. Zoe had stolen from us before, small things, things we never thought she'd touch. My old iPod, a necklace that I had gotten for my sweet 16, a couple $100 from my mom's purse. She always promised she'd pay it back. She never did. But this was different. This wasn't a small thing. This wasn't something easily brushed off with a half-hearted apology. This was a part of our family's identity, something irreplaceable. This was our history, our legacy. I sat there for a long time staring at the photo. I had to act, and I had to act fast. I texted Karen back, asking for more information. She sent me the name of the pawn shop. I didn't even think twice. I got in my car and drove straight there. The pawn shop was tucked into a rundown corner of the city, the kind of place you never really notice unless you're looking for something specific. I pulled up outside and took a deep breath. My heart was racing. What was I even going to say? I walked in, the bell chiming as I pushed the door open. The smell of stale air and old wood hit me instantly. The walls were lined with rows of jewelry, each piece more generic than the last. I walked up to the counter where an older man with a graying beard stood. "Can I help you?" he asked, glancing at me. "I'm looking for a necklace," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It was sold here recently. It's silver with emeralds. It's old." The man raised an eyebrow. "You got a name for it?" I hesitated. It's a family heirloom," I said, the words catching in my throat. "Sorry, I can't give out information about items unless you've got proof of ownership." I didn't have proof of ownership, not really, but I had something better. The memory of my mom's reaction when she told me about the necklace years ago, about how it was the last thing her mother had given her before she passed. It wasn't just some trinket, it was a part of who we were. "I know it's here," I said, fighting to keep my voice from breaking. "My sister sold it. Her name is Zoe. She's the one who brought it in." The man's face shifted. "Your sister, huh? You know, there's a lot of people who come through here. Sometimes I don't remember all the names, but I do remember a kid who looked pretty strung out. Came in with a lot of jewelry, real shiny stuff. Could have been her." My blood ran cold. It was her. I could feel it in my bones. "I need to see the necklace," I said, trying to remain calm. "I need to buy it back." The man hesitated, but then seemed to weigh the situation for a moment before shrugging. "All right, I'll show it to you, but it's going to cost you." I nodded, my chest tight, and followed him to the back of the shop where they kept the more valuable items. He dug through a drawer and pulled out the necklace. When I saw it, I felt like I was looking at a ghost. I didn't even need to touch it to know it was the one. It was unmistakable. The familiar swirl of silver, the deep green of the emeralds that had been polished by time and care. The chain alone told me it was old. It had a thickness and texture that couldn't be replicated in modern jewelry. "How much?" I asked, barely able to speak. The man gave me a price that made my stomach churn, but I didn't care. I would find a way to pay it. "I'll take it," I said. As he rang up the transaction, my mind raced. I needed to confront Zoe. I needed to make her face what she had done. When I got home, I found Zoe sitting on the couch, her arms wrapped around her knees as she stared at the floor. She was high, I could tell. Her pupils were dilated, and there was that strange emptiness in her gaze, like she wasn't really there. "Zoe," I said, my voice shaking, "where is it?" She looked up, blinking slowly, her expression blank. "Where's what?" "You know what I'm talking about, the necklace," I said, holding up the box. "I know you sold it." Her eyes widened for a moment, then narrowed as she pulled away from me. "You have no right to—" "You stole it," I shouted, the anger bubbling up in me. "You sold it for drugs. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Zoe laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "What? You think I'm the first one to screw up? Mom's always covering for me? You're just pissed because you don't get the same treatment." I didn't know how to respond to that. My chest tightened. "This isn't about you being the baby anymore, Zoe. This is about respect for our family, for Mom, for me, for what we've been through. You've destroyed that." Her face twisted with resentment. "Yeah, well, you don't know what it's like," she snapped, her voice breaking. "You don't know how it feels. You don't know what it's like to feel like you're nothing." I swallowed, my eyes stinging. "I don't. But I do know what it's like to have family. I know what it's like to fight for each other. But you've chosen to destroy that, and I can't stand by and let it happen anymore." Her silence was deafening. She didn't speak. She didn't move. She just sat there, a broken figure, the person I used to know long gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. And in that moment, I knew. I had to do what I never thought I would. I had to convince Mom that it was time to let Zoe go. The next morning, I was exhausted. The emotional toll of confronting Zoe had drained me more than I expected. I'd told myself I wasn't going to let her manipulation get to me, but watching her crumble, even as she denied the magnitude of what she had done, left a raw, aching hole in my chest. I hadn't even told Mom yet. I knew I had to, but I wasn't sure how to start. The thought of her finding out, of seeing the devastation in her eyes, felt like too much to bear. But it couldn't wait. I had the necklace back, sure, but the real damage had been done. Zoe had stolen something that meant so much to all of us, not just the heirloom, but our trust, our family bond. She had shattered it, and I wasn't sure how we could ever get it back. I sat down at the kitchen table with my phone in my hands, staring at the screen. I needed to tell Mom what happened. I just didn't know how. The thought of her defending Zoe again, making excuses, saying that Zoe didn't know what she was doing, was unbearable. In the end, it wasn't me who decided when the conversation would happen. Mom called me. The phone rang in my hand, and for a moment I hesitated. Then I pressed the button and brought it to my ear. "Hey, sweetie," Mom's voice crackled through, but there was something off about it. She sounded distant, distracted. "Mom," I said, feeling the weight of the moment pressing on me. "We need to talk." I could hear the change in her tone immediately. "What's wrong?" "I found the necklace," I said, my words coming out in a rush. "The heirloom. Zoe sold it. She sold it for drugs." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, and for a second I thought she hadn't heard me. Then, quietly, she spoke. "What do you mean she sold it? How do you know that?" I closed my eyes, feeling a knot form in my stomach. "I went to the pawn shop. I saw it there. Karen, she saw it too. It's gone, Mom. She sold it." The words hit her like a punch. I could hear her breathing quicken as the realization sank in. "Zoe," she whispered. "She sold it?" "Yeah," I said, the anger I had held back coming through in my voice. "She did. And that's not even the worst part. You need to know, Mom. You need to see it for what it is. Zoe is destroying herself. She's not getting better. She's only getting worse." Another silence hung in the air, longer this time. I could hear her struggling to find the right words, the words she never wanted to say. "I know, honey," she finally murmured. "I've known for a while, but she's my daughter. I can't just give up on her." I clenched my fists in frustration. "Mom, I'm not saying you give up on her, but you have to stop enabling her. You have to stop pretending she's going to change. She's not. Not until she hits rock bottom. And right now, she's dragging us all down with her." Mom was quiet again, and when she spoke, her voice was barely audible. "What do you want me to do?" The question hung in the air like a weight. I felt my heart break all over again. This wasn't something I should have had to say, but I had no choice. "I want you to stop making excuses for her," I said, my voice breaking with the weight of the words. "I want you to stop protecting her from the consequences. I want you to let her hit rock bottom, and then, maybe, she'll realize what she's done. Maybe she'll finally understand that we can't keep saving her from herself." Another long silence stretched between us, and when she spoke again, her voice was laced with tears. "I don't know if I can do that, sweetie," she whispered. "I don't know if I can just turn my back on her." "You're not turning your back on her, Mom," I said softly. "You're letting her face the truth. You're letting her see that actions have consequences. You can't keep saving her from this, because one day there might not be a way out." I could hear her struggling to breathe, and my heart ached. I wanted to reach through the phone and hold her. I wanted to make this pain go away for both of us. But I knew that, deep down, this was something she had to do for herself, for the sake of our family. "I'll think about it," Mom finally said, her voice barely audible. "I don't know if I can, but I'll think about it." In the days that followed, I waited. I waited for Mom to make the decision I knew was inevitable. I knew that, deep down, she knew I was right. She couldn't keep enabling Zoe, not this time. But I also knew how hard it was for her to let go. Zoe, meanwhile, hadn't come by the house since I confronted her. Part of me was relieved, but another part of me knew that she was spiraling further into her addiction, further away from the family who had always been there for her. She had no idea how badly she had hurt us. I wasn't sure what happened next. Would Mom be able to make the tough call and let Zoe hit rock bottom? Or would she give in again? Every day I wondered if we were about to lose Zoe entirely. Then, one night, my phone rang again. This time, it was Mom. "Sweetie," she said, her voice steady but strained. "I've decided. Zoe. She's going to have to face the consequences. I can't keep pretending everything's okay." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "What does that mean, Mom?" "It means I'm not helping her anymore," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "If she wants to get clean, if she wants to fix this, she has to do it on her own. I'll be here when she's ready, but I can't keep covering for her, not anymore." I felt a mix of relief and heartbreak. This was the right decision, but it was also the hardest one Mom could make. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for doing the right thing." "I don't know if it's the right thing," she said quietly, "but it's the only thing left to do." It's been a few weeks since that conversation. Zoe hasn't come around. She's in and out of shelters, staying with friends who also don't have their lives together. I don't know where she is right now, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust her again. But my mom and I are slowly starting to heal. We've spent more time together in the last few weeks than we have in years. I can see the strain in her eyes, but I also see a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, Zoe will wake up and realize what she's lost. And maybe she'll find her way back to us. But until then, we have each other. We have the heirloom. We have our family's legacy. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like we might just be able to keep it intact. I don't know what the future holds for Zoe, but I do know this. Sometimes you have to let people go. Sometimes you have to let them face their own consequences in order for them to truly change. It's hard, it's painful, but in the end, it's the only way. And maybe one day Zoe will understand that.